In this video, we're going to cover the setup of the Sennheiser wireless mics that you can check out from the equipment room. The system is made up of two main parts: the transmitter, which is the pack that the lav mic gets connected to and is used by the talent, and the receiver, which is the part that gets connected to the camera using this cable here, with the XLR portion going to the camera. Now, you always know which one is the receiver and which one's the transmitter by looking at the top. The transmitter is going to have the mute switch here and this mic line connection over here. And this is where this end of the cable gets connected there and screwed onto the top. And that's the end that your talent will get to wear during the program. This wireless system has over 1,600 frequencies available, which can seem a little overwhelming, but don't worry, Sennheiser actually made the setup of it really easy through a menu process called Easy Setup. To get started, we'll go ahead and squeeze both ends here of the cover and open it up to reveal two AA batteries. The transmitter works on AA batteries as well. And all you have here is an on-off switch and a set button. So let's go ahead and turn it on. So what we'll do is go ahead and hit the set button and look for Easy Setup. When you find it, hit set again. And we want to look for Scan New List. Go ahead and hit set. This is going to take about a minute or so to scan through all of the available frequencies to see if it finds one that's free. And by free, it means clean. And in South Florida, that can be really difficult to do because our airwaves are really congested. So there's not a lot of free frequencies available. So let's go ahead and see what the results are first before we take any other steps. And also important to note is that while this is scanning, you really want to make sure that there's no other electronics around. In other words, like your iPhone shouldn't be right near this. The transmitters should not be on. The only thing that should be on and sort of by itself is this receiver completing this scanning of a new list to see which frequencies are the cleanest and would be available for you to use. The scan is done. Let's take a quick look here using the arrow keys to see. What we're going to look for is a number down here next to the word free. We want to see if there are any free or available frequencies. And unfortunately, I got zeros all the way across the board. And that might happen to you too. When that does happen, there's another step you should take. And go ahead, I'm going to hit the on-off button to get us out of there. Hit the set again. And this time I'm going to look for the word squelch. You don't really need to know what that means right now, so don't concern yourself with that. But now the squelch is set to low. I want to set that to middle. So I'm going to hit the set button here, change that to middle, hit set again. Now with the squelch set to middle, I'm going to go back to the main menu and then go down to Easy Setup. And then I want to scan a new list again. We'll come back in a minute to check the results. The scan is now complete. Let's go ahead and take a look at our results. We see that in bank 7, I do have one available frequency, which is good because I'm only using one mic. Now this is a very important time to point something out. If you're using two wireless mics at the same time, say one for your reporter and one for your interviewee, make sure that both transmitters and receivers are on the same bank. And what that means is when you complete this scan here like this, you want to make sure that this number down here next to free, that you have at least two of them. So that way you can set both of them to the same bank and different frequencies. Because if they're on different banks, they could cause interference and they could actually start to cancel each other out, which could be a real problem. So I'm going to go ahead and accept this Easy Setup scan here by hitting set and then hit set again. And now it's going to store it. And if I hit this to go back to the main menu, you'll see now I am on frequency 554-100. Now that we got that out of the way and the receiver's taken care of, let's take a look at the transmitter. Don't worry, we don't have to go through all the same steps again. Instead, all we have to do is come here to the receiver, go ahead and hit set again. This time we want to look for the word sync. There it is, and hit set. Now come over to the transmitter, open it up, make sure the batteries are in, turn it on. And now you're going to hold these two units face to face, because this is an infrared beam that comes out of here and here. So we want to make sure these two are face to face with each other like this, about 6 inches apart. And notice now it says sync with a check mark. What that meant was that automatically sent the information from the receiver to the transmitter. So now if we look at the transmitter, we can see that it is also set to 554-100. And this one is also, if we get out of this main menu, set to 554-100. Notice this first bar over here on the left is now full. It's really small, so it's hard to see on camera, but it's labeled RF for radio frequency. So that means this is basically like the signal strength on your cell phone. So the higher this bar is, the better the communication is between the two. The lower that bar goes means it's starting to lose sort of connectivity, and that's not a good thing. Controlling the levels. Working with audio levels in wireless mics can be tricky because the levels can actually be controlled in 3 different places: at the transmitter, the receiver, and at your camera. In order to achieve the best sound quality, each of these individual audio levels needs to be properly adjusted. Fortunately, the process of doing it is a lot easier than it sounds. Let's go ahead and start with the transmitter. What we're looking for in the transmitter's menu screen here is what's known as sensitivity. So I'm going to hit the set button here and scroll through and look for sensitivity. Once I find it, go ahead and hit set again. And now notice the sensitivity ranges from all the way from 0 dB all the way down to -60 dB, which you'd have to be in a very, very loud environment to get to use -60 dB. Generally speaking, for the human voice, you want to start somewhere around -15 to -18 decibels. But again, that's just a starting point. You're not exactly sure every time, but you start there and kind of adjust accordingly. So when I say adjust accordingly, how do you know what to be adjusting to? Well, remember, this is your transmitter. Let's bring in the receiver over here. So if we look at the receiver, we can see there are 2 columns. So the left one represents the signal strength, if you will, between the transmitter and the receiver, which is good. Notice that bar doesn't move. But now if you look closely, you'll see the second bar moving up and down. This one is in response to my voice, so we can tell if the sensitivity is too high or too low. If it's really low, the bar will be down here. If it's really high, you'll see the bar pegging at the top, which it should never do. So if I stop talking, you'll see that this bar stops jumping. And when I start talking, it jumps again. So if I have the sensitivity turned up too high, you'll see this bar way up here the whole time. And if I have the sensitivity too low, you'll see it way down here. Generally, you want it about 3/4 of the way up. So that's it for the transmitter. Let's look at the receiver. On this end, you'll want to go ahead and use this cable here. Connect this end here to the top where it says AF out by screwing it on like so. And then you have your XLR connection here that would go into your camera. Now, I said AF out, which is what it says here at the top of the receiver. That's also what we want to look for on the menu screen. So I'm going to go ahead and hit set. And if you don't see AF out, you can cycle through this and look for AF out. Again, there's no hard and fast rules here what the number should be, but I usually try to keep it around the same as what the sensitivity is for the microphone, around 15 to 18 negative on the dB side, but there's no hard and fast rules. Notice that when I'm on this screen, I can no longer see the output. So now where I have to look is on the VU meter of the camera that I'm using. And of course, that's going to vary based on all the different cameras that we have, which one you're actually using. So in other words, we start with the transmitter by looking at the level on the receiver. Then on the receiver, we want to look at the level on the camera, since that's where the signal is ultimately going. It's going from the transmitter to the receiver and from the receiver to the camera, which is the third place that we mentioned where you can adjust or check the levels. So we can raise and lower sensitivity on the transmitter, we can raise and lower AF out on the receiver, and then of course we can adjust the levels on the individual cameras that we're using. This may sound like a lot at first, but after you've done it a few times, you'll be able to complete this setup pretty quickly, and it'll give you high quality wireless sound for all of your productions.